Hi, folks. Welcome to Thursday's edition of I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast. No FMQs today because it was yesterday. Stuart and I covered it yesterday. We're going to kick off with a presser. As you may be able to notice in the background, I have Steve Bell's cartoon from The Guardian, and that thing with the yellow blob in it is Boris.
Looks like he's trying to pop his Bentley between the cheeks of your bum, Norrie.
Well, Steve Bell does represent him. Due to the Scottish Tories, if you remember Operation Arse, to try and keep Boris out of number 10, well, away from the leadership of the Conservative Party, Freudian slip. So we're going to start with the presser. I think Wings will get a mention today.
Just possibly.
And that'll take us in various directions, I'm fairly sure. So the press conference today was mostly about when are you going to disagree with Boris, Nicola? Stuart.
Nicely put. That was very snappily put. Yes, I think there were about 2 questions out of 20 odd that weren't just an attempt by so-called fancy, clever journalists to trip up the First Minister. They're not going to do that, no matter how hard they try. I think, in particular, I'd like to point out, I don't know the guy's name, but the guy who works for the Press Association, he got dissed. He brought in Professor Hugh Pennington, and how did the First Minister describe him? We hear evidence from varying degrees of expertise. That sounds like Keir Starmer in court. Varying degrees of expertise. In other words, Hugh Pennington said,
well, she specifically brought up him claiming that the R number, his estimate for the R number in care homes was 10.
Yeah.
Which means every single person infects 10 people. Therefore 100, therefore 1,000. Now that was what, 5-6 days ago. So everybody in care homes has now been infected according to his R number. And the press are taking this guy seriously.
Well, that's the problem, mate. She called him out last week on that, and he came back with nothing. His basis for coming up with that number was, I'm assuming, I wouldn't even be polite enough to say drawn up on the back of a fag packet. He's pulled that number out from between the cheeks of his arse, and that is not in any way scientific. I think it's been shown that Hugh Pennington's unionist proclivities certainly mean that taking anything he says, you want a massive pinch of salt.
I think we need to point out that Hugh Pennington is a member of an extreme unionist cult.
He's part of Scotland and Union, isn't he?
I've just jotted down what his R number of 10 would mean. There's 84,000 people in care homes and working in care homes, right? So that now, according to him, there should be 100,000 of them infected. That's in 5 days. So
I think it's fair to say that the guy for the Press Association and Professor Pennington, and let's remember Professor Pennington has been retired for 17 years or so, but they both got a hell of a slap for Nicola, and she seemed to kind of enjoy it when she was doing it as well. Fair play.
It followed up immediately afterwards to the guy from The Sun, sorry for swearing, Chris Musson. Oh, he got scalped. He asked a question that she'd answered 5 days ago. How stupid was that? To do it in public as well.
But they're now at that stage. They're at the stage where they're having to go back over ground she's already covered.
And
because if you're honest about your answers, I mean, to stand there and say, as she did today again, look, I'm sorry, I can't answer you yes or no on that because I don't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah, well, I always think of that advert on the telly. I don't know what it's for, but the guy suddenly goes, "Nobody knows."
Oh, that's a good advert.
I love that.
Does your lock conform to British standard?
That's the one. Aye.
But anyway, I wrote under Chris Musson for The Sun, scalped, pelt. Good Scottish words.
Well, as I say, it's nice that Nicola, she seems to have really enjoyed this whole process of speaking directly to the public. It's about a horrendous situation. She always makes sure that the public know she's feeling how horrendous the situation is. But I think showing the press for the diddies that they are, and showing her for the calm, considered person who will make evidence-led decisions and try to explain why she's making these decisions, has actually worked really well for us.
Well,
that's exactly what I was about to say, Jimmy. Well said.
What it does is it allows the public to understand that the job the press is doing has got nothing to do with investigation, has nothing to do with freedom of speech. It's all about trying to catch the First Minister out.
It's what we call in the trade SNP bad.
Well, but that, I mean, everybody watching that's going to be saying to themselves, wait a minute, nobody knows that. Why do they want her to commit to that? The only people that haven't moved on to the non-political position that most of the politicians, not all of them, but most of the politicians that are on telly every day have taken is the press.
Yeah, but I looked at those front pages this morning, and genuinely, I thought there was a huge disconnect between what Boris had indicated yesterday and what these front pages were talking about, the unlock the lockdown stuff that's coming on Sunday, because he didn't really go there. Unless this is a massive kite that he's flying through the press, I don't think so. I reckon that the press barons are trying to bounce him into making a decision.
I wrote in the margins, Cummings. It's probably one of those unofficial, anonymous briefings from Dominic Cummings. And because it's come from number 10, the press are quite prepared to publish it as if it's fact.
Yeah, maybe I just think that some of these billionaire press barons, the money matters to them more than anything else, and they're losing shed loads. Not just the people that own the media, but their friends that own airlines or own massive pub groups. I mean, let's be honest. Most of these people, the people with money and big businesses in Britain, they're only ever going to contribute or donate to one political party, and that political party is in power at the moment. And these donations matter. Whether we believe that or not, that the money will out, I think it will, because money matters to Tories. It's the most important thing in their life.
There is. I mean, again, guys, you do this to me all the time. Devil's advocate. There has to be an acceptable argument that says we need the economy to keep trucking on. We need it to open up more. We need it because it's jobs, it's people's incomes, and all that. Just give me a minute, Jimmy. But I'm with the Nicola Sturgeon stance on this one. You can bring an economy back from the dead. You can't bring a person back from the dead.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that line.
And that's the difference between the Tories, who seem prepared to accept a higher level of dead people. Let's be blunt.
And Norrie, they're also not prepared to accept that the economy's trashed regardless. The fact that we haven't released the economic news and the economic indicators that we should have by now, because it's going to be so horrifically bad, is indicative in and of itself that they know the economy's trashed. Opening it up now wouldn't make a difference. Property prices are going to plummet in England regardless of what we do. And that breaks the hearts of those multi-millionaires that are behind the Tory party because they own the bloody properties. Tough.
The other thing to remember is these multi-millionaires can sit in splendid isolation, surrounded with their bank books, and send some wee Egypt out today they're running about for them.
Aye.
They can continue to self-isolate.
And they will.
More people can't.
Well, that's the thing, mate.
It's
the poorest people that are going to get sent back out to work. It's the poorest people that are working at the moment. I mean, let's be clear, all these frontline key workers and all this clapping that we'll do again the night, but these folk aren't well paid. These folk didn't get weighed in massively. They're working like bloody dogs. They're doing 6 and 7 days a week now, and they're getting very little thanks for it. Clap on a Thursday night doesn't make any difference to anyone.
No, that's true. It's quite clear that the alternative to Cummings having engineered the front pages of the papers this morning, which were out at midnight, which the First Minister did actually say she only saw them at midnight last night. It still looked a bit contrived, a bit like a conspiracy, because they were all the same.
Yeah, very much so.
And it's an attempt to steamroller a decision from Boris Johnson, using the press, the front pages, get the people all worked up. Oh, we'll be able to go to the pub and sit in the beer garden on Sunday. That's what the front pages said. But don't, and they're in a hurry to get this lockdown released. Not just for that, because there's a poll about the confidence of the people in the government's capability, confidence that the government is doing the right thing through this crisis. Now, so it may surprise you that 60% of the people still think the government were doing quite a nice job last week, but this week it's dropped down to 56%. Now, as the weeks go by, that could drop. Sorry, that's probably only Tory voters.
Well, the trick to that one is, why is it dropping? Is it dropping because they don't want to come out of lockdown, or is it dropping because they do want to come out of lockdown?
Well, that's a very good question. Do people?
That's the question.
It would appear, yes. So obviously, there's people that they're just gagging to get out there. But there's
but most of the
people that are afraid to send.
Most of the polling I've seen says people are scared.
Yeah, a lot of people are scared.
Well, Richie Sunas thinks it's because you're all idle.
Yeah, the fact that
can't let you be on lockdown holiday any longer because you'll forget how to work.
Well, I have to point out to you, Nori, as it's your favourite hobby horse, that UBI is going ahead in Spain.
Strangely enough, I spoke to my brother-in-law, who, as you both know, the listeners won't, is, well, he's not a Spanish citizen, but he lives in Barcelona with his Spanish partner and 3 Spanish sons. And it's apparently not that big an issue for them.
It is going ahead.
But well, he was quite confident that some form would go ahead. But Richard isn't quite the political geek I am, so he doesn't quite grasp that there's UBI and there's UBI. There are different forms.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. It'll also be interesting to see just how much the press in our country rail against it. I mean, I'm assuming that the press in the UK will describe this as some weird kind of socialism from what is, in a sense, quite a right-wing government in Spain. So it'll be interesting to see how we spin that.
Well, no. Well, in theory, they're called socialists, but I think they're Tony Blair type socialists.
I don't know if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, I brought this up and said that the Labour Party got into power and maintained power really through the welfare state after the war, and they haven't had a good idea since. Nicola Sturgeon is backing UBI, and I think that's the death knell of the Labour Party. If it becomes SNP party policy, it's the next big idea for the world, for the welfare state. It supersedes the welfare state in a lot of ways, and it certainly simplifies it if my version of UBI was to be introduced. Can I make one other point about the newspapers today and their front pages and why they're so desperate to get rid of lockdown? And it ties into UBI. They're terrified that there's a new normal on its way. All the money, all the people who are in their nice, safe castles built out of pound coins don't want change. They don't want it to become a new normal. They want to go back to what it was.
Exactly.
Well, that was another poll which was quite worrying. Apparently, not only do these people that vote Tory, are they confident that the government's doing a good job? They're also expecting the economy to bounce back even better than it is at the moment after the crisis.
Yeah, you've got to wonder what on earth has put that idea into their head, that what is possibly going to be the deepest and hardest recession in the memory of the living world, much worse than 1927. How on earth do they think we're just going to bounce out of that in a few months? It's madness.
I don't think anybody has really grasped the devastation, the number of small businesses that are never coming back from this.
I think you're right.
Which is the other reason they are desperate to get out of lockdown.
Nori, it's awful. I went walkabout for a couple of days there, and it's awful when you take a look at just how many of these places, as you walk by them, brilliant wee businesses, lovely calves, and everything, bespoke butchers, the whole lot. The high street in Scotland in particular, the high street's kind of had a renaissance the last few years, which seems to be kind of opposite to what was happening down there. But you do worry for all these people, because they've sunk thousands of pounds and so many hours into their businesses. And as much as I think Nicola's making the right decision right now, I do worry that these people, they'll just not survive, because the minute that the English government gets anywhere close to releasing lockdown, then they cut off the funds to these people. And when they cut off the funding, do these things all go to the wall? Do the banks just swoop in and take all the business, take all the goodness out of it?
Well, the interesting thing here is the market economy. If these businesses shut, rents are going to have to come down. Business rents. Because
that's been the case for years already, though, isn't it?
No, they've maintained. Well, as you know, I've run my own businesses. I have never seen a rental contract that allowed for rents to drop. The only way a rent can go, if it doesn't stay the same, is up. And most rental contracts, they're based on an inflationary rise every 3 years. That's the normal. So you get 3 years to make your money, then your landlord takes your profit off you for a year, and you have to start building again. And that's kind of the way it works.
Well, look what's going to happen in Leith. Debenhams are just shutting another 5 stores. Can you see Debenhams in Ocean Terminal reopening? I can't. And what happens to Ocean Terminal without Debenhams?
It's not one of the main ones. It's not one of the named stores to shut.
No, but all the same, I can't see it reopening.
Edinburgh in general is going to be a belter, guys. Now that the new St James Centre, that's still going on apace. They're still working away at that. So when that opens, half of Princess Street will shut. Half of the Princess Street shops are going to move there because it's a smarter, new operation to open them.
It's also wind free.
Well, they've been talking about rejigging Princess Street, which is the main street in Edinburgh. For those of you that don't know Edinburgh, looks onto the castle and the gardens.
But
they've been talking about redoing that for how long? Yeah,
Nori, but it's interesting who the owners of Princess Street are. Apart from the Queen having that block along the end, most of it is owned by Dubai and Saudi Arabia. So they're not going to countenance small artisan businesses going in there, lovely coffee shops and bars and that. They're going to try and find big businesses to put in there. Where will they find it?
Well, they won't. I doubt they'll move any of the ones off St Andrew's Square, which is all the designer shops.
Yeah,
that's an area I spend absolutely no time in at all.
Not really, Ada. I thought Maltrees Walk was your second home.
But I can tell you what, it's one of the worst places to sit on a pavement cafe, because it's right on top of the wee hill there. The wind comes right across the floor to fight. I mean, honestly,
excuse me. There is a fantastic pizza restaurant there. I'll have you know.
Aye, but that's what you guys get for going up the tune. The only reason to go up into Edinburgh city centre these days is surely to go up and pick at SNPHQ for all these staffers that are trying to take Reverend Stu doing them, getting them tossed on Twitter and what have you. Can we go and throw posh cakes at the door?
Very timely mention of the Reverend Stu. Wings Over Scotland, Stuart Campbell. I noticed today that he had 2 Twitter accounts. He had the Rev Stew account, that's gone, and he had the Sealand account,
Gazette, aye.
the Sealand Gazette, which is a very old account. That predates Wings Over Scotland. That's been taken down as well, apparently.
Is he off Twitter?
Well,
for the moment,
not through choice.
Obviously not through choice. Oh my God!
And
Craig Murray's threatened with a jail. Wings Over Scotland gagged. Who's left?
Stuart, you've got the head of Young Scots for Independence crowing about it on Twitter. The head of SNP students at Stirling University crowing about taking him down. That's how bad it's got. People who work for the SNP and people who hold pretty good positions in the SNP are happy to take down an independence blogger because he disagreed.
Here, can you read that, or is that mirrored?
I can read it.
No, we can read it.
Now, that's the headline in the National about this poll, which was taken by Wings Over Scotland, paid for it. And so you've got SNP voters were asked in this poll, did they believe there was a conspiracy to take down Alex Salmond? And 30% said yes, 29% said no, and 40% didn't know. But the National has published it as a headline as only 30% believe in the conspiracy.
Do they mention?
The way they don't know is it's a majority of SNP voters believe there is a conspiracy.
Do the National mention that it's a Wings Over Scotland poll?
Yes.
Because Paul Hutchin was tweeting some of the results and didn't mention it was.
So I mean, that is a false headline. That's calling that 30% believe there is an SNP conspiracy. No, it's 51% believe of the SNP voters, are the only people they asked, after all, believe there was a conspiracy. So the majority, but the National, they're at it like other newspapers. They've got an agenda of their own.
Well, Jimmy, I think you've got your own theory on this one.
Yeah, well, I was a bit disconcerted, shall we say, that Wings had even run the poll. I know what he's after. He has his own agenda, obviously. And I think he was looking for support of a certain part of the SNP to have a pop at these people who are having a pop at him. As I say, I didn't agree with everything that he says, but I totally defend his right to say it. The fact that people who actually are employed by the party or hold positions in the party feel the need to silence him, I think, is disgusting. If they can't argue against his points and can he counteract his viewpoint, shutting him down is the act of a coward, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, what they're terrified of is that he gets enough support that they lose their cushy positions. Because he has been banging on for some time about carpetbaggers in the SNP.
Don't get me started.
Exactly. Well, no, you and Stuart have both said the same thing, though. It has become the home of people who want a career in politics.
Yeah.
They don't actually have many political convictions. They're just interested and they want to have a career in there. And the definitely become home to them.
Young people at university at a certain time, 2007, when the SNP first came into power, they must have looked around and said, I want a job in politics, I better join the SNP. It was perfectly logical. But that doesn't mean to say, well, they're called carpetbaggers, careerists.
Well, it's easy. You look at your bank balance. I haven't got enough money to be a Tory. I'm a bit too middle class for the Labour Party. The Labour Party are failing anyway. Oh, I know. I'll join the SNP.
Well, can I give you a quote from Joanna Cherry's article today? She's talking about a plan for after the emergency, the crisis is over, about what the SNP should be planning to do. She says here, we exist to win independence for Scotland, not for the sake of it, but to make sure that the vital decisions about how we run our economy and our society are taken closer to home so that we can do things differently and better. This means that despite the current crisis, we should be continuing a pace within our party on policy development and strategic directions. Now, she's having a go at the boss.
She also said in that article that Nicola Sturgeon was the most popular boss and doing a great job.
She's doing a great job as First Minister, but my position is the same as hers. She's not doing a great job as boss of the party.
Joanna Cherry could not fill her boots.
Oh,
there you are. There you are. I've said it out loud.
She's entitled to have her opinion.
She is entirely entitled to her opinion, but she is a different beast to Nicola Sturgeon.
Yeah, but I support the SNP to get independence.
Right.
And if the SNP stop striving, that's a good word, striving for independence, then I'm starting to worry about why I'm supporting the SNP.
And you'll then go and support the Green Party, who support independence.
Well, I have a green tendency. Can you see it there, the side of the hair?
You have a tendency to ridiculously stupid ideas sometimes.
If you've got a green tendency, you're a worry, Stuart, given who they have representing them at times.
Come on.
There's greens and greens.
Yeah.
And there's SNP and SNP.
Well, I think coming out of Stuart Campbell's poll, the interesting number for me was the fact that the SNP had a 30-point lead over the Tories for voting intention for next year. I think it begins now to look that the SNP could win hugely next year. And I think we need to start, the Yes movement needs to pipe up right now. Get on the SNP's tail, get on Nicola Sturgeon's tail, and make her come out and have a clear policy, absolutely crystal clear as to what we are voting for next year. Are we voting for another referendum? Are we voting to hand them another mandate? I want to know exactly what voting SNP means.
She has. I don't think there's a choice. She has to say vote SNP for a second independence referendum. That's simple. She has to say that. And I've no doubt there'll be polling somewhere that says if she says that, they're not getting a majority, but that's what she has to say.
She's getting, according to this poll, whose poll was this one? James Kelly's poll. And that's one where they get 53% in the constituency vote. So according to
James, wait a minute. James Kelly's run a poll. Where did he get the money
Independence
for that?
blog. Well, he's basing this on the panel-based poll. That'll be the Wings Over Scotland's poll. Sorry, he analyses everybody's polls.
Yeah.
But he predicts that the SNP, well, they need 65 seats in the Scottish Parliament to get a majority. There's 129 MSPs. He's predicting they'd get 74.
Yeah, which straight away, an outright majority should mean we are having a second independence referendum, and we are having a time of our choosing. Sorry,
guys. Again, I hate to burst your bubble on this one. Just because they've got a majority at Holyrood, that doesn't count. They have to get a majority at Westminster. They actually have to become the government of Great Britain.
Yes, I know. We've heard all this.
Yeah, well, the bottom line, Norrie, if she comes out and says that this is for a second referendum, and Boris then says, no, you're not having it, then we move on. Then we then have to take our next steps, and we have to take the steps, not talk about taking them.
Yeah, and she has to do, I think, the two policy definites. UBI, she has to say they're
UBI. Why has that got to do? What's that got to do with independence?
Because that is where you get what isn't voting SNP now will vote SNP for UBI.
UBI and UDI.
Yeah, well, all the U's and all the I's. I do think if she comes out with if the SNP come out with a definite policy to pursue some form of universal basic income, she will pull in another, well, she'll destroy the Labour Party.
She'll take maybe Labour. Well, I think Labour were sitting about 15% in Stuart Campbell's poll, which is actually quite a good number for them, given they were sitting at 12 last week.
Right.
But she'll take 7 or 8, 9% off the Labour Party straight away, put them into Diddy figures.
I mean, Norrie's right, because the atmosphere at the time of the 2014 referendum, people that had never thought about voting were voting for SNP. You know, the schemes in Glasgow, the schemes in Edinburgh, they were all, I mean, driving around, there were stalls set up in the corner of streets in Newhouse and that, and teenagers waving flags and all the rest of it.
It was noticeable just how many people that you thought were Labour areas were moving quite quickly away from being Labour areas.
Well, the SNP will come out of this by default, the fact of the government, but they will come out of this as being the party of the working class. Their support for care home workers, the NHS, they'll be the party of the NHS in Scotland. Tie that into independence and a universal basic income, and they could wipe out the Labour Party. The drib drabs of the Liberal Democrats, you know, I mean,
they'll always get a few votes, mate. Same with the Greens.
But I actually think they're going to take Tory votes off the Tory party this time. The Tory party will end up as an enclave up in the northeast,
and the
southwest, in the fishing communities, and there'll be a strip along the border. And I'm not even sure that vote will hold up in the borders for them.
No, I'm not sure it'll hold up in the northeast, mate. I think the fishing communities are going to take a look at what happens with this cliff edge that we drop off at Brexit in December. They might not turn around and vote SNP, but what will probably happen is they'll no go out and vote Tory either.
Well,
you're both forgetting that only 10 years ago, 15
Stuart,
years
you sound
ago,
like Cher
the North East voted
believe
solidly SNP.
Right, sure. You'll have to say that again.
Sorry?
You'll have to say what you just said again, because you
all
just
right, 15 years ago, the North East voted solidly SNP.
Yeah, there's not a lot in it. It's, and I don't think it is fishing. I don't think it's all about fishing, but fishing is part of it. Unionism's part of it as well. But whatever happens with the Brexit, the fishing industry's getting a kicking. Either the Tories agree to something that will upset the fishermen because they won't get a bigger quota, or they don't agree it and they get slapped with tariffs and they've nowhere to sell their fish.
And they've not got a market anymore.
I think you've been too specific. I think the argument really in Aberdeen and the North East is it's outside the central belt. They feel they're not being listened to because they're not in Edinburgh or Glasgow.
What? Seriously?
Yes.
I thought Aberdonians were quite smart. They've had Aberdeen.
They did very well out of the oil business, didn't they?
Exactly, and they've been subsidised to the bahookie because of the oil business, because we can't afford to lose the jobs. The Central Belt got devastated by Thatcher, and the Tories have made
money thrown at it.
And Aberdeen was well looked after by the Tories, and will continue to be well looked after by the Tories, which may be the reason they vote Tory.
Possibly.
I've got a friend up there that can't sell his house.
Aye. Can he still sell his sheep?
His other house is, shall we say, in the street parallel to Queen Street in Edinburgh.
That's an expensive street.
Well, he doesn't really have to worry too much about no selling his house in Aberdeen.
Aye, you can sit on it for a while then. Aye,
a wee while. He might have sold it by now. It's a while since I've seen him.
Is he a member of the Royal Scots Club while he's at it?
No. He's a working class boy done good. That's what he is.
Oh, he used to go around there to play snooker in the basement.
I'm not sure you'd be allowed in now, Stuart. The Wings thing. Do we actually believe Wings would go so far as to try and start a second party?
No, mostly because he's already looked into it and realised that whilst he has a lot of support, the reality is he as a person has way too much baggage, mate. He would get torn to shreds if he started a party.
I don't think that would make a difference to him. And if Boris Johnson could do it, why can't Stuart Campbell?
Stuart Campbell doesn't have the right face.
I'd kind of agree that he's not the best figurehead for the party. But I remember somebody crunched the numbers. And if 50% of the people that follow Stuart's blog voted, it would give us something like, it was like 6 seats.
Mm. Yeah, well, the problem is, mate, there's that other Max the Yes thing out there who, their online campaign sounds great, but the reality is, as far as I can ascertain, it's a bunch of right-on kind of hippie lefties that are behind it, and they're not really what to let on that the bold Mr. Sheridan's in the background pulling some of the strings as well. But it's a few well-kent faces that you wouldn't want actually getting elected.
The question of Stuart Campbell as a leader, I can remember when he first came to prominence, and I think it was you and I, Norrie, it was a march. Must have been maybe 2012, wasn't it 2014? We met up at the Scotsman Bar at the top of Auburn Street, and the march must have gathered on the Royal Mile there. Stuart Campbell's fans had put up a table and were giving away badges.
It was mobbed.
It was mobbed. Even
it wasn't even popular. That. It was actually Stuart Campbell himself outside EH1, the bar at the top of Coburn Street.
Yeah, that's right.
And he was getting mobbed. And that was purely and simply because, I mean, everybody moans about the amount of money and the influence he's had. But he did what he does. He went in, he got the facts, he links to where his information comes from, and he gives you his opinion. Nobody else. I mean, Bella Caledonia was too busy trying to be the Times of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And there really wasn't anybody else. Peter A. Bell wasn't around then. Scott Goes Pop wasn't around then. They came along later. And he just did a really good job of ripping apart the arguments that the unionist press were making.
Can I just remind everybody that if they didn't know before, Norrie and I had a meeting with Mike Small way back in that period as well, and we decided we wouldn't go in with him.
Well, I think Mike probably decided he didn't want to come in with us either, because he wanted everything to be badged as Bella. It wouldn't have lasted. I'm sorry.
No,
I wouldn't have been
still
part
here.
of it for long.
We're still here, Norrie.
Do you remember the Scottish Times that I used to do the cartoons for?
Yeah, okay.
George Kerrivan was involved with it way back. That was an attempt at an online newspaper.
Who was the other one? Newsnet Scotland, another one?
I haven't seen them for a while either. They were good, actually. Newsnet was good.
Back in the day.
Shame it went.
We're showing our age here, Jimmy.
Well, a year and a half, but we genuinely need right now to accept nothing's going to happen before next year's election, and something has to be done now with the Yes movement. I don't care how people go about doing it, but they need to galvanise it, because if the SNP and those around Nicola Sturgeon think they can get away with going into next year's election without having a specific commitment to IndyRef front and centre, if they think they can get away with it, they'll do that, and they'll leave us hanging on a bloody peg for another 5 years, another full parliamentary term.
I think you're right, but I do think they're smart enough to look at that sensibly and basically come up with an offer. I do have to say, I'm not as worried as everybody else seems to be about Yes atrophying. You announce a referendum, Yes will rise.
Aye. Oh, absolutely. I just think now's maybe a time to hold feet to the fire, because when they're that far ahead in the polls, politicians get complacent. You know that.
Well, the only reason I would suggest that we maybe need to do something now is to get the fighting over and done with.
Aye, because there's going to be a fight, so we might as well get touring about it now.
The usual suspects who think they're entitled to be in charge of, yes.
Mm-hmm. Aye, there's a few of them need slapped down a bit.
Need to be slapped.
And I think that poll evidence of that poll, which the National tried to bury, that the majority of SNP voters believe there is a conspiracy against Alex Salmond. They need to. That is hope that the SNP leadership need to think about that very seriously.
I disagree with you. I really don't think it matters. Not when we're talking about a yes vote. I really don't think it matters.
I thought you were talking about a fight.
I don't think there'll be a fight in the SNP about it. And
no, I think there'll be a fight. I think there'll be a fight in the Yes movement to slap down the people from the SNP that think they're going to direct the entire campaign, because they just ain't.
I'd agree with you there, Jimmy.
I think you're both wrong. I think that there'll be an ongoing skirmishes until it's a referendum's announced. When a referendum's announced, it will disappear. So it's damage limitation within the Yes movement until such time as a referendum's announced. At that point, it will become irrelevant. That's what I believe will happen.
Well, I worry that a 30-point lead over the Tories means that people whose priority is policy rather than independence may influence the First Minister too much. I don't give a damn about the Gender Recognition Act and the argument that's going on about it. I'm not really that fussed about what kind of UBI we go for, as long as we're going to say that this direction of travel is where we're heading. But I am absolutely 100% certain that independence is necessary for Scotland, and that if people within the SNP aren't 100% certain, they shouldn't be in the SNP.
I have to agree with that.
The only cloud in the horizon I see with this is the fight between the gradualists and the we need it now.
I still think we need it now, mate. I still think we need to be making moves, and I think she has to make a solid statement as to what a vote for her means next year.
Well,
and I do worry that there are people close to her that will convince us otherwise.
It'll be 7 years since the last referendum, come 21.
Which is, as you pointed out before, Norman, that's a generation in politics, isn't it?
That's your political generation, according to the new Good Friday Agreement. So there you go.
By the way, there's worse documents to take an example from than the Good Friday Agreement.
That'll be the one that the British government is soundly ignoring at the moment during the Brexit negotiations. That one.
You're not allowed to say that.
I know.
Right, guys.
I got a row for swearing.
Anybody catch anything funny today, or is it all doom and gloom? Oh, and by the way, before I forget, when's Nicola going to fall out with Boris?
Possibly this afternoon when they have that phone call that he was trying to avoid.
Phone call. And she's already flagged up everything that she's her positions already, so he knows what to expect.
Aye, but Norrie, just for a giggle for the punters, I can't remember who tweeted it yesterday, and I know it's out of date by a day, but who cares? It's funny. Annie Wells, somebody had noticed on Twitter that she was in Holyrood yesterday, and the wag who posted it just put, "Is that really a necessary journey?" I thought, aye, that is funny, because Annie Wells never really needs to be anywhere. She'd be better back behind the till at M&S than anywhere else.
Is she no deputy leader or something now, Annie Wells?
No, she's a spokesman for something or other.
She's got a job. Why would you give her a job?
Maybe to shut her up.
You know, what is she, Minister for slagging off Nicola?
I think she must have blocked me. I've lost. I didn't know. She must have blocked me on Twitter.
I think if they've given her an actual position, they've probably told her to close down her Twitter account.
Oh, that's why she's not there.
In case she says something stupid.
That's maybe why they've given her a job, mate, just to shut her up.
Well, that might explain why I've not heard from her for a while. I'll need to give her a ring.
What's the expression? I can't remember. They've given her a job. I can't remember what the expression is. There's an expression that covers that. Everybody gets promoted one level beyond that at which they should be. if you remember that.
You're getting there, mate. Keep going.
Yeah. So she's been promoted out of trouble, out of where she can make trouble. Anyway, guys, thanks for that today. That was quite good fun. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead. Thanks, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Norris Stewart. Thanks for watching and listening, people. And as the wording at the back says, don't worry, folks, we've got an app. So catch you all tomorrow. Cheers for now, folks.